Thanks for checking out our podcast. If you are interested in learning more about writing, go check out our syndication page, seriouswriter.com, where you can find resources, articles, videos, topical classes, and the Brew and Ink podcast. Again, seriouswriter.com. We thank you for listening. Hello again, and welcome back to another episode of the Brew and Ink podcast. This is an Interbrew episode review the second season of AVATAR The Last Airbender. If you have heard our first season review, then you know kind of we're going to go through what we liked about it, what we took away from it, we thought was good with the character development and storyline and things like that. We are going to jump right into this. Britt, do you have anything you want to preface this with?
No, I mean, obviously listen to the first episode where we kind of go over the series as a whole a little bit more and like introduce the series. So we're just going to kind of pick up here. But again, it's a really strong season. This one is, and I think this third is good too. But it just continues to build and get a whole lot better.
It's got like 3 of my favorite episodes.
It's just got some really great writing, and it's writing great all through 3 seasons. But
the basic idea of the Airbender story is that Aang is the last Airbender. He was basically frozen in ice for 100 years, Captain America style, and when he is found again, he is the avatar that everyone has been looking for, that everyone thought was, missing or gone. And he now has to figure out, who he is in this timeline. Most of the people he knows are gone. He also has to figure out what it means to be the avatar, because he's still a young kid. Never really got all of his training. And so most of what they're focusing on in these first few seasons is him finding a master in each of the bending realms. So there's airbenders, which he already pretty much has mastered. Mm-hmm. There's water bending, which he eventually found, water bending masters in the first season, and Katara being the one that keeps continuing his training. And season 2, he's trying to find an earth bending master, which comes in, I thought a really cool character, probably one of my favorite characters in the series. Is this character named Toph, who is a blind little girl who self-proclaimed, but also others do recognize her as being, one of the best, if not the best, earthbenders of their time. And the way that she's kind of introduced in this story is, as they're searching for someone that can be a earthbending master for Aang, they find this competition of earthbending, this kind of like wrestling. Like there's a guy in there called the Boulder who talks very much like Macho Man Randy Savage. He's like he's going. They show him going through this whole competition, like just destroying all these other earthbenders within this matchup, and he gets to, because he wins all these, he gets to challenge the reigning champion called the Blind Bandit. And it ends up being this little girl who's blind, and he's like, the Boulder is conflicted about attacking a blind girl. And she's like, oh, yeah, well, you sound more like the Pebble to me. He's like, the Boulder is no longer conflicted. Let's do this. This very kind of...
It was a little Dragon Ball Z, to be honest. It was. Yeah. I don't know if they were doing it on purpose, but I think they kind of were.
Right.
So it was a little throwback to that anime of the Dragon Ball Z, where, the fighting and
and there's always someone that can power up more or is better than the person that was the best. It's from what you've seen so far. They introduced this character, and that's like around season 4 and 5. The first few episodes they're establishing the fact that Aang in these earthen kingdoms, and he's trying to find someone that can help him. And the first guy he runs into is this Earth Kingdom general that wants to. He thinks, he's got the solution to defeating the Fire Lord, because that's the main goal. Is Aang needs to learn all these bending forms so that he can be the best avatar he can to overthrow the Fire Lord, who is being a dictator and trying to, basically take over all the other nations. And so this Earth general is like, we can weaponize the Avatar state. Like, all we need is the Avatar state. Once you can do that, you can just wipe out all the Firebenders fleet and all that. And so he basically does whatever he can to get Aang into this Avatar state, including eventually attacking his friends and, like sucking Katara into the ground and like all the way underground, so that Aang freaks out and then he just goes on a rampage. And so that's kind of your introduction to this series of like, okay, this, even though they sort of have these allies, they are also, single track minded, or very much in the mindset of like, we're just going to use you as a weapon, and basically force your hand to do what we think is going to be the best solution here. One of my favorite episodes, and I don't know if you guys remember this one, but it was called the Tunnel of Love, or no, the Cave of Two Lovers, with the whole. They've got these, like, they meet these nomads that are traveling.
Yeah, that was a cool episode.
Musical nomads. And
that was a cool episode. They're like hippies. They're like
hippies, and they had the song "Secret Tunnel." He's like, I don't remember the rest of the song. And then they get to the mouth of the tunnel. And they're like, oh, we're gonna go. And he's like, oh, I remember the rest. And die. And it's like, we'll just randomly sing that phrase throughout the day, just secret tunnel. But you learn through this episode that the original earthbenders are these giant badger moles. Learn how to earthbend, and then they're the ones that teach these other two people that are, very Romeo and Juliet, star-crossed lovers. They can't be with each other, so they meet in these secret tunnels, and they learn to earthbend from these badger moles, and that's how earthbending is born. It's one of my favorite episodes. This whole season, like I said, it revolves around them trying to find a master for Aang. And they thought the first master they were going to find would be an old friend of Aang's that he actually remembered, called Boomy.
He was in the first season, wasn't he?
Yeah.
They visit his city, and then he's kind of like crazy old guy.
Yeah. And so then they're like, let's go back to Boomy, and he can teach Aang. Well, when they get there, they find the city of Omashu is now under Fire Nation control, and Boomy has been captured. And Azula, which she was in first season, but this season they really do use her a lot more as kind of the main villain.
Well, they just kind of introduced her at the end of the first season, right? Yeah, so there's a couple of things going on with this season, and it makes it, in my opinion, it was a little predictable, right? Because this is spoiler-filled, but it was a little predictable because at the end of season, and it didn't detract from me enjoying the season or the show, but you kind of saw where they were going. He starts out and he gets Katara, and then they kind of finish up with the Water Kingdom and that whole battle. But the turn really happens with the fire guy's name with his uncle.
Zuko.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So you have that kind of turn where they start to become really exiled.
Right.
Now they're really more
they're enemies of the
now they're
Nation.
more enemies of the Fire Nation. They're not just on exile with a chance to redeem themselves. They're a little more just true exiles. And
Azula is like sent to now.
And so now Azula becomes the real villain of the second season, so to speak. And she's really cool, and she's got these kind of interesting two side chicks with her. So you've got that, and then you've also got finding the earth bending part of their group.
Yeah.
You kind of see where that's going, right? With Toph. Yeah. Toph is a great character.
Yeah.
But what I like about the second season is that it continues to have the overarching storylines, but still really explores these new interesting characters and these new interesting. It brings back some things like Boomy, and it brings back some different things.
Yeah.
But it still is able to really explore these different new places that you haven't been.
Yeah.
And that's really what you want in a cool fantasy. You want to explore a little bit the world and see how this is all working.
Yep.
And the show really gives you that time to do it without it becoming episodic, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Instead of like, Thundercats, where at the end of every Thundercats he's got to go thunder,
Right.
I mean, like, or He-Man, where it was episodic. He's just going to go,
right.
I have the power and all that stuff.
Yeah, Aang isn't going into the Avatar state in every episode.
Exactly. And so there's more of an overarching story.
Yeah.
But they're still able to have these great little story and character explorations as they go. And I think Toph really was able to not complicate it, but add that another dimension that allowed them to explore the characters not all over again, but to another level, because she's different.
Well, her introduction is actually during a hallucination that Aang is having. They end up in the swamp, where the swamp is like showing them all.
Oh, I like that. Cool. I like that.
Things like that, and he sees this little girl with this flying boar pig. And at the end of that episode, they learn that everything in the swamp is connected. Like the swamp is actually all one.
That was a really cool episode.
And they're like, the swamp either shows you something that you have experienced in your life, or something or someone that you're going to meet or experience in your life. And so then it's in the next episode or 2 episodes from then, it's when they go to this earthbending competition, and then the blind bandit ends up being the girl that he saw in his vision. So they do those sort of things where they'll set something up in one episode, and they don't wrap it up in that episode. They go, an episode or 2 down the way, and then they kind of give you that little reminder, and you're like, oh yeah, that was that thing.
Yeah, but a great example of a little episode that they did was the Avatar Day.
Oh my goodness.
Which is it was fun, but at the same time, it further explored the world. And
right. They show up and they're like, oh, Avatar Day. Oh, this should be fun. And they have these 3 statues of, past avatars, and then one of Aang. And then just as you're like, oh, this will be a fun celebration, they then start burning these statues in effigy. And they're like, down with the Avatar, down with the Avatar. And they're all like, they're right there in the crowd, and they're like, what just happened? And so you get this whole story of how they're like, the Avatar in your past life, you killed, our great Emperor Qin the Conqueror or something like that. And so it goes on this whole side story, which is what is so great about Avatar. It's like, Aang's like, he's the monk, so he's going to try and make, amends and retributions, all that. So he's like, you know what, I will atone for my whatever your grievance is. And so like, okay, you're going to prison. And so they throw him in jail. And so then Sokka's like, come on, just do your airbending slice and let's get out of here. And he's like, no, I'm gonna make amends for whatever they're angry about. Mm-hmm. And so then Sokka, they talk him in to being the detective to figure out what it is. Basically, Aang has to go on trial to defend himself as to why he didn't kill Qin the Conqueror. And so you get this whole story from this side of the village, and then there's another village on the other side where they get another half of the story. And so you're getting revealed to you that, okay, yeah, this world is not all the same. It's not all the same, built of the same people. Some people don't like the Avatar. They've got their reasons. Some people really like the Avatar. And then you get down to the story of it all, and you find out that in the past, when it was Avatar Kyoshi, she stopped this guy named Qin the Conqueror from doing what the Fire Lord is doing now, which was taking over all of the different areas. So you get this, Aang's supposed to be defending himself on trial, and he goes into his Avatar state, and Kyoshi, the previous Avatar, starts speaking on her own behalf through Aang, and basically confesses to the whole thing. She's like, yeah, I killed him. He was trying to take over the whole country, and so I divided our land, and in his stubbornness, he stood there and fell to his death as I split the land apart. And so then it comes back to like Aang and Katara. She's like, yeah, I'm sorry, you kind of confessed. And they have like our wheel of malfortune. They had the wheel of punishment. And so they basically, to find his punishment, they spin it, and it ends on boiled in oil. So they're going to boil the Avatar in oil. And of course, these other characters that showed up at the beginning of the episode called the Rough Rhinos show up to now like start destroying the thing. And they're like, Avatar, save us. And he's like, I'm sorry, I can't do anything. I'm supposed to be boiled in oil. And the guy's like, community service, I'm changing to community service, and we're asking you to do a service to our community. And so, of course, Aang obliges them, gets rid of the Rough Rhinos, and in their celebration now, Avatar Day is celebrated by eating non-boiled dough in celebration that the Avatar was not boiled in oil that day. So that's just, one of those little, like, microcosms of how they add all this world building into their episodes.
Yeah.
And keep it going, but at the same time, they're revealing to you past Avatar history. They're revealing to you Aang's character. He's a monk. He's not all about fighting and just making his way. He's like, I want to try and help these people understand and all that. So yeah, that was a funny episode. Sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent.
No, that's fine. I was just saying that was one of those that I'm talking about, where in a series you have time to do that, and especially if you're not going to be episodic, where you're really telling a longer story, you've got time to do that. You've got time to do stuff like episode 7 of Zuko Alone, where he's in that village, and I mean, my kids loved that episode. Like, they just love the fact that they took an episode and they concentrated on him, and they showed some of his character and who he really was, and they just went in more depth into who he was, and they do such a good job of it. It's not like you're sitting there going, "What's happening?" and you're not bored,
and you're not going, "Oh, this is a filler episode. Maybe I should skip this." But the reason why Zuko was alone was, in the previous episodes, he was still dressing as the Blue Spirit and going out and stealing food and supplies and things like that and bringing it back. And Uncle Iroh was like, where are you getting all this stuff? And basically he became suspicious and called him out on it. And so they split their ways from there. And so Zuko goes out on his own, and he finds himself in a situation where he's defending this family that takes him in, and he has to defend them against corrupted earthbenders. So you find out in this episode that it's not just the Fire Nation, that's the big bad, those are the only bad guys. Like, there are people within all the kingdoms that are corrupt.
Yeah, and it's one of the things about modern magic systems that some writers still don't get sometimes.
Yeah.
And I even just watched Mulan, the live action Mulan.
Yeah.
And they were doing stuff, and I'm like, you haven't explained anything.
Right.
You basically said, this is magic.
And now you have to believe,
and now you have to believe whatever's going to happen. And so and so as a reader or a watcher or a consumer, people just don't get away with that like they used to. Like, 50, 60 years ago, you could just say, oh, there's magic, and boom, we're using magic to do whatever we feel like we need to do in the story.
Yeah.
And even my kids go, story reasons. Like, even my kids know, like, there's no reason for this to happen. There's no rule.
Yeah.
But with Avatar, they did a great job with coming up with rules and not breaking them, but expanding them.
Yeah.
Brandon Sanderson does a great job with this in a lot of his books.
Yeah.
But you expand them, where it's like, if it's water, then waters and plants. Well, then can you and they even had that one episode, I don't know whether it was in this season or the next season, where that one lady was showing her how to control people with the blood stuff. I mean, like the fact that they would, and then of course Toph eventually can move steel and metal because there's minerals and stuff. I mean, so the fact that they could do that made it what we talked about earlier. It gave it depth.
Yeah,
they didn't complicate it.
They made it more complex.
It made it more complex.
Yeah,
and it made it more. It makes it more real to people that there's depth to it.
They do a good job of establishing a system and then explaining why individuals are special within that system.
Yeah.
Like with the firebenders, everyone bends fire, but then there's the ones that are really well trained or have the ability to shoot lightning. And we see that actually happening throughout the second season because we watch Azula as she's training and practicing on her ship and things like that. And it shows that she's able to basically shoot lightning.
Right.
And one of the first encounters that we see of it is her and Zuko and Iroh. They are coming on board her ship because she's like, yeah, we can get you back. I can take you back to the Earth Kingdom, and Father wants to welcome you back in. And one of the guys makes the mistake of saying, like, Princess, what do you want us to do with the prisoners? And so it alerts them, and so that kicks off a battle between them, and you see Azula trying to shoot lightning at Zuko, and Iroh actually grabs her hand and redirects the lightning through his own body and just off into the sky. So then you go, oh wait, not only is she on a different level, but now Iroh is on another level because he obviously knows how to handle the lightning and then redirect it on his own. So he starts teaching that to Zuko as well throughout this season. And basically, we get to a part where, Aang is being pursued through a lot of these episodes by Azula. They have their confrontations. They escape. Azula gets her two friends involved, May and Ty Lee. Yes, and Ty Lee is a chi blocker. Basically, she has mastered the art of pressure point combat, and so she can block your bending when she hits your different pressure points, which is that's important because that ends up coming further and further down the line. They expand upon that, like the idea of being able to take away someone's bending. In her case, blocking the chi like that, hitting the pressure points, is only temporary, but later on down the line, spoilers, that's one of the big wrap-ups to this whole Airbender series, is with Aang learning basically how to take someone's bending away permanently. So, there's a couple other episodes. The library is a good episode where they've got like an underground library in the desert that they go under there, and there's a spirit down there that's basically been curating this library and all that. But those are kind of
that's when they lose Appa. That's when they lose Appa.
Yes, the Sandbenders.
And so and just
another type of Earthbender.
Again, more complexity, not complication. It's more complex. Like you're still taking the same idea. You're just doing different things with it. Yeah. So the whole thing with Appa was, he was starting to. It was a very interesting choice story-wise because he was starting to become the savior in certain moments. Like, oh, here's Appa. Oh, he's gonna knock people down,
or he's their escape.
He's their escape hatch. And now, so this is around 10 or 11.
Yeah, episode 11 or end of 10. Yeah,
that they steal him, and so you've got this. You've got this long-running story problem. It's not a problem with the story, but you've got this long-running obstacle where that creates conflict within the group because it was Toph that had to make the decision. Is she going to save or try to, save Appa, or is she going to save the tower or whatever? Because everybody was going to go down and all that stuff. And so, it made for some really interesting story choices and character choices. And I'm saying all that to say they could have easily done that badly.
Right.
Like another show could have done that badly as a convoluted story structure or whatever story point in order just to keep the show going. But they actually used it in a very productive, constructive way to, again, create more conflict, to bring out more character, and to challenge stuff that was going on.
And then Appa is Aang's only connection to his past.
Right.
That's the only other thing that he has with him that came from his past life, living with the air nomads and the airbending tribes. So when Appa goes missing and is kidnapped, Aang starts really losing it. On a path to find him, he's single focused. He doesn't care about anything else at this point. But it leads them to the Earth Kingdom of Ba Sing Se. And this is where, within the city walls, basically the lie has been perpetuated that there is no war going on outside. So that this whole Fire Nation, attacking everywhere, it's all being covered up. And so with that, you have all these people being brainwashed and manipulated within the city, that they go through this storyline with, people going missing and people not remembering what they did or things that are just very convoluted. Just a whole system. Once you were inside this city, there's a walled city. It's got a huge wall. And the way that they make it in the city is by basically stopping some Fire Nations who were attacking the wall, and they destroy one of their tanks that was basically built as a battering ram to try and get through the wall. They do that and they get in, and so they're trying to bring this to the king or an emperor, but they're just being redirected in every way because he is also being lied to. He's not privy to the fact that there are outside forces, there's a war going on. You're sitting here as a viewer going, wait, this is the guy they're trying to get to, but he's manipulated and these other people are keeping the truth from him. So how are they even going to reveal any of this? And at the same time, they're still looking for Appa, who's missing. And that actually ends up, there's 2 episodes in this end of the series that are some of my favorite. Episode 14, Tales of Ba Sing Se.
That's a great episode.
It's a great episode. It's got some good laughs with Sokka. He finds this school of all girls that are doing poetry and a specific type of poetry. They're doing haikus. And so
it's instead of a rap battle, it's a haiku battle.
It's a haiku battle, yes.
Well, okay, so second season also, something important starts to happen in the second season is that Sokka is less and less just a bumbling fool.
Right.
They start to bring out that he actually has talents and skills.
He's a tactician.
And they start to trust in that. They start to recognize it. Yeah. And again, I think it's so important for a long running show.
Yeah.
You can't just have the dumb guy.
Right.
That's always dumb. That doesn't last long. That's a gimmick, and that's not a character. That's a gimmick. And so anyway, so they do a good job of starting to introduce that. Because again, it would have been really easy just to give him a power, all of a sudden I'm an earthbender or something, right? I mean, they could have done something like that, but instead they develop this thing in him over time.
He's got his trusty boomerang that always comes back, and then he's got, they start revealing he's a tactician. He's able to think of these plans and these ideas, and he's able to execute them. But yeah, you're right. He's not just a throwaway character. He's not just a comedic relief. He does come in handy in certain situations where he can do what he can do.
Yeah, and also the second season is also where they start to bring in other characters. So this is something that starts to happen more and more in the show. So not only do they get to go into different villages and different places and explore different more complex ideas or whatever, the world building, they bring a lot of times those characters back.
Yes.
Like Jet comes back,
right?
And they go back to Boomy, and they go back to that whole situation where they set Boomy free, and he's like, "No, I'm going to stay. I could have left, I could have been free anytime or whatever, And so,
and they give you more backstory on the whole Fire Lord and Zuko and Uncle Iroh. So like back in the episode that we talked about where Zuko alone, they do a lot of backstory about Zuko and his sister as kids with their mother, because his mother was a really important character to him. And then when she went missing, I believe she goes missing, that was kind of his parent that he connected with, whereas Azula was always like her father's favorite. And it shows you that kind of dichotomy and how they were sort of working with each other, but always kind of pitted against each other. And you hear in that episode how Iroh was actually the older brother. He was supposed to be the next Fire Lord. But when he went to go invade Ba Sing Se, in that battle, he loses his son. So his son dies. And because of that, he basically retreats, pulls away, and kind of gives up on the war. And Zuko's father, Ozai, uses that as a way to convince his father, who was the Fire Lord at the time, that Iroh is not fit to be, he doesn't have a descendant anymore, he doesn't have a lineage, and he's turned his back on the war. So make me the Fire Lord. And so then you find out in this episode with Tales of Ba Sing Se, you get a little snippet of each character. It has like a short little story that's kind of wrapped up in. You get one from Iroh. He's going and he's buying things from the store. He's buying flowers and incense and things like that. And along the way, he runs into a guy that tries to mug him. And instead of just like, demolishing him because he's a great firebender, he actually teaches the guy, and he's like, you could be better than this. It's not who you're meant to be. You can use this ability to, be a better person. And at the end of that episode, you see him, all the stuff that he was buying was to memorialize his son. And he sets up the incense and he sings a song, Brave Little Soldier Boy, that is just, it's so heart-wrenching. And you get this depth from these characters that are supposed to be like the bad guys, or they started off as the antagonists. And through this season, you get shown more humanity. Like in one part of the season, Toph ends up with Iroh on their own, and she doesn't know who he is. And he's actually like inspiring her, like telling her, like, look, it's okay to get help from others. Like, she had this issue of like not asking others for help and feeling like she had to do everything on her own. And he's like pouring his wisdom into her, and you get to see the levels and the depth of like who these characters are and like where they're coming from, where they've come from, and where they are at now, and kind of where they're going, and how they're helping the main characters kind of get to those destinations as well.
Yeah, the whole thing with Iroh is really interesting characterization. And again, they just do such a great job with it.
Yeah.
Because it totally explains who he is.
Yeah.
And they're bringing him full circle back to his greatest defeat kind of thing, the greatest loss. But explains why he's so invested in Zuko. And trying to see his redemption and but not in a pushy way. He's always loving and kind and every now and then he pushes a little bit, but then it's such a great character. But also the fact that he comes back to Ba Sing Se and opens a tea shop. Like the fact that that's his art.
He serves the people that he came to conquer.
Yeah. It's so beautiful.
Too, yeah.
And the fact that they put these amazing moments and arcs in a
redemption
in a kids quote unquote kids show, it really dignifies, in my opinion, children to say they can get complex ideas, and I think Mr. Rogers was the first one to say, like, no, kids are thinking about this stuff way more than you think they are.
Yeah.
they can deal with difficult emotional issues. We just have to teach them. And all that to say is, I think that's one of the reasons why this show has such a huge impact, is because they didn't talk down to kids. They were still fun, and they had fart jokes and stupid
Yes.
stuff. I mean,
Yes,
they had like silly stuff, but at the same time, they would have these moments and these arcs of character development and the complexity of a secret police. Like, you would think, oh well, we reached the city and we get the next thing that we need
Now
for our goal.
ally.
Now we have our ally. But no, they put another obstacle, that's the emperor's being lied to, and there's this political intrigue, and it is a very mature sort of story.
Yeah.
But kids love it. I mean, kids totally understand it, and they totally get it. And the stakes are interesting. Anyway, it's just all very, very, very well done. And I was trying to think, as you get to the end, it kind of all comes together.
Yeah.
I think one thing I want to talk about, it can be as we kind of close up. So at the end, like, it all kind of comes together. They find Appa, and then there's this whole big fight thing, and Aang was he's been learning how to enter into the Avatar state willingly, instead of just like as a reaction or whatever. And part of it is he has to let go of Katara, he has to let go of that idea that he's gonna fall in love with her, yada yada yada. I don't know how much I liked Zuko betraying them at the end.
Right.
It felt a little convoluted to me. It felt a little like, oh, tricked you. I don't know. I just didn't.
I think it was his last effort at believing he could be redeemed in
the sense of with his family and stuff. I totally get what they
like.
saying.
Katara and him were having this like heart-to-heart moment where they were in this situation where they were locked up together and they're talking and they're kind of like revealing back and forth, and you're seeing like, okay, Zuko is definitely, he's got a heart, or it's not you learning, because as a viewer you've been seeing this along the way, but now you're getting to see the main characters that he's been pursuing, kind of see that side of him now. But then his sister shows up and basically tells him, if you help me out here, I can guarantee you're going to be brought back in. Your honor will be restored. And so he chooses in that moment, he's like, okay, I'm going to believe my sister. And he feels like this is my last shot. This is my best chance at having that redemption within the family. And so, you as the viewer, you're like, oh, come on, don't do it. Come on, Zuko.
I don't know how Katie feels about it. I just, like, when I watched it, I said, I don't know whether they just didn't set it up well enough for me, but I was like, that seemed like a little bit of a trick. That seemed like a little bit of a bait and switch, and not the mature sort of writing that they were known for, to me.
From what I've read, the creators of the show were insistent on Aang being Katara's love interest. Everybody else, and like the story writers, the other story writers they had been pushing for the more organic and natural Katara and Zuko pairing.
Yeah.
So, which I think would have made a much better match. So I don't know how much the ending of that particular episode might have been the creators being like, no, it's got to be Katara and Aang, and we've got to get rid of Zuko from
that. Yeah, and that definitely pushed her away when he did that. Yeah.
Well, and again, it's kind of like what happened with Appa being taken.
Mm-hmm.
It could have been convoluted. It could have been a cheap trick. It could have felt like that. But they set it up in such a way with Toph having to make a difficult decision.
Yeah.
Like, they put some good writing behind it that didn't make me go, well, that was kind of cheap.
Right.
Like, they're just trying to extend the season another 8 episodes or whatever. and that's kind of what it felt like was
invested.
Yeah, it kept me invested, and it was believable to me. And with Zuko, it was like someone's trying to get him somewhere, and they're trying to stretch this out. We all know Zuko's going to join this team.
Right.
We all know this is going to happen. Like we at least if you're right, like me, I saw it. That's the beginning of the end of the first, beginning of the second season. I'm like, okay, that's where they're all going with this. He's going to be the fire, guy. And especially when they bring in Toph, you're like, this is what they're setting up. I mean, we get what they're going, and if they had set it up better story wise to me, but I totally get what Katie's saying. I think Zuko and Katara would have been a much more interesting match as far as a romance, and it didn't feel forced with Aang, but it just wasn't the same kind of complexity and maturity that I think the Zuko Katara would have had.
Yeah, and so this season wraps up with what you're talking about, like Aang learning to basically go in and out of the Avatar state on command. And to do that, he has to go to this guru or like a spiritual guru that was teaching him how to like unlock his chakras. And basically he learns like in this state, when you go into this Avatar state, if you happen to be killed in the Avatar state or like injured really bad, like it will cut off it will basically end all the line of avatars. And of course, as writers, we all know that that's called foreshadowing. And so in the end, when they're having this big battle and confrontation, when Zuko betrays them and sides with Azula, Aang ends up going into the Avatar state to basically try and win the battle. And in doing so, Azula shoots him with lightning. So the other thing that they've been showing was all this training and leading up to, like, she's got this lightning ability, and she tries to use it against her brother, and Iroh learns how to redirect it, and then Zuko learns how to redirect it, and in this moment she uses the lightning to shoot Aang in his Avatar state, and it basically kills him. And Katara had this spirit water that was given to her at the end of season 1 that said it has really good healing properties, which she almost used on Zuko to heal his scars right before he ends up siding with his sister, and she didn't have the opportunity to, which meant she had it available to now save Aang and bring him basically back to life. But now his Avatar state is all locked up, and you basically get them escaping by the skin of their teeth at the end of season 2. That's where they leave you kind of hanging, like, not a very good up note. They barely made it out of there. Aang just got brought back to life. The Avatar state is now, not really accessible for him.
Yeah.
And what are they going to do? He still doesn't have firebending. And they know that their time is coming up, because I think it's also revealed
in the library they found when there was going to be like a
Sozin's Comet.
Yeah.
Sozin Comet, which is going to basically make all of the firebenders super powerful, and then the only time that they have that they could possibly stop that is an eclipse coming up in like a couple weeks. And so that's where they kind of set up season 3.
Well, and that's good writing. I mean, urgency is always good.
Yeah.
Time limit, time frame.
So
that was fine. I just, for me, that was like one of the few, if only, instances where I thought, that could have been handled a lot better. I'm not saying Zuko should have joined them at the end of season 2. I'm just saying, if they were going to move him back to the Fire Nation, there could have been a much more complex, interesting way to do that than the way that they did it. It just felt a little like, and we'll get into it when we get into season 3. But season 3, some of the writers changed.
Mm-hmm.
Like the writing was different in season 3, and so like Katie's saying, I don't know how much at the end of season 2 was just someone else is about to take over and they're deciding this is what we want to do, and they just did it. So who knows what all was going on?
Yeah.
As I have learned with publishing books, and I'm sure it happens with movies, and as I've heard with movies, just because you write a great script, the producers and directors, they think they know better about story than you do, and so they make decisions, and you just got to go with it, So who knows what happened? It's just if there was any point for me to not complain or critique, that would be the one.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, other than that, I've really enjoyed Avatar The Last Airbender. Like I said, there's at least 2 or 3 episodes in this season that are some of my favorite. The Secret Tunnel episode,
that was a great episode.
Appa's Last Days, and then the Tales of Ba Sing Se. Those are some of the ones that I would recommend.
I don't know how you can just pick. I mean, after you've watched it, maybe you can go back and pick episodes, but if you're going to watch it, I don't know anyone who could just kind of watch through here and there. It's just so good. Yeah, I would honestly love to meet or hear from anyone who doesn't like this show.
Right.
I've never met anyone who was like, like maybe people haven't seen it.
Right.
But I've never met or heard from anyone who was like, yeah, I watched.
Right. Yeah. Now, as far as I know, everyone that's seen it has been like, yeah, it's a really good show. We'll be definitely coming back with another episode for season 3. So, if you have not seen season 3 yet, now's the chance to catch up. Go watch season 1, 2,
before
3.
we spoil it for you.
Before we spoil it for you.
It's a race against time.
Netflix, yeah. I saw a really cool DVD collection of both Avatar: The Last Airbender and Korra, all at like $30. So yeah, you can. They're definitely accessible and available. So go out and watch it if you get a chance. And until then, raise a glass to inspiration and stay inspired, guys.